You can't. All righty, so this week we're going to be covering chapter 11, okay, innate immunity. And specifically, we're going to do an overview of immunity in general, and then we're going to talk about barrier defenses. Then next time we meet, then we will continue our discussion of innate immunity and by talking about the second line of defense. Okay, so today we're going to go over the learning objectives. I'll answer any questions. And we'll do an overview that I'm calling Immunology 101. Then we'll talk about the first line of defense, okay, the barriers. So we're going to talk about physical, chemical, mechanical, and microbial barriers. I'm going to use two different examples from the human body. And then we'll talk about what to do for next time. Okay, so this chapter helps us move toward being able to meet the following learning objectives. Being able to define the key role of evolution as it applies to microbiology. Being able to identify microbial structures and connect the structures to their functions. Identify pivotal components of microbial systems important to human health. Analyze and describe the impact of microorganisms. Okay, any questions? Okay, if you think of any, let me know. I'm happy to answer them. And let's move on to an overview of immunology, what I'm calling Immunology 101. So let us go to the whiteboard. All righty. So the immune system is our defenses against attack by microbes. Okay. Last week we talked about how pathogens try to get in and colonize and invade into our tissues and generally cause a problem. Okay. So today we are going to talk about the defensive side of this. Okay. And in humans, immunity is divided in two, okay, into the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system. Now, we tend to separate these two because not all animals have an adaptive immune system like what we see. Specifically, we're going to be talking about what we see in mammals, okay, humans specifically. Okay? Whereas in all animals, excepting maybe sponges, okay, have an innate immune system. So we know this developed first, okay, and then the adaptive immune system that we see in humans developed later. Okay, so even though these two work together, they are still separate. Okay, you can see the innate immune system by itself, whereas, so far as I know, you never see the adaptive immune system by itself. Okay, so the innate immune system has what we call the first line of defense. And the second line of defense. Okay. Whereas the adaptive immune system is considered the third line of defense. Okay. So in this brief overview, we're going to talk about what those lines of defense are. Okay, so for the first line of defense, it's all about barriers. Okay, so it's kind of like in ancient cities, you always had a city wall, you had a barrier to hide behind when the raiders and the pillagers came. Okay, so that you had a way of keeping them out. Okay, so we're going to be talking about these barriers today. Okay, but just because repetition is the key to learning. Okay, there are 4 types of barrier defenses. Okay, so we talk about physical barriers. Okay, we talk about mechanical barriers. We also talk about chemical barriers. Okay, and then it used to be that's where we'd stop. Okay, but as we've learned more and more about the microbiome, we're finding that our microbial friends also act as a barrier. Okay, so we've added a 4th one, microbial barriers. Okay, now if the pathogens get past this first line of defense, if they get past these barriers, then we have a second line of defense waiting. Okay, so the second line of defense comes into different modes. Okay, so alphabetically, okay, we have cellular defenses. Okay, and we have chemical defenses. Okay, and we'll talk more about these 2 next time. Okay, but because repetition is the key to learning, okay, there are certain cells that act as the second line of defense. Okay, and they are, we have phagocytic cells. Okay, so cells that can wrap their membranes around the pathogen and swallow them on down. Okay, and then we also have what's called natural killer cells. Okay, and now these natural killer cells are related to the cells of the 3rd line of defense. Okay, and so we're going to be talking more about them. Okay, and then we also have what we call granulocytes. Okay, and these are cells that carry, chemical warfare. Okay, they carry chemicals within them that, when released, cause the death of pathogens. Okay, and like I said, next time we're going to talk more about these guys. And then there are chemical defenses that are just floating around in your blood and in your lymphatic tissues or lymph system, okay, which we're going to talk some more about today. But we have the main ones that I want you to know about. There's a whole slew of these, okay, but we're going to talk about cytokines. So these are chemicals that cells, cyto, use to communicate with each other. Okay? And then we have a series of proteins that we call complement. Okay, so we're going to be talking about those. And then also we're going to talk about how much detail do I want to go into? No, that's as much detail as I'm going to go into. Okay, so pretty much they break down into these 2 groups. You'll find next time that it's more complicated than that, but this is a good place to start. Then when we get to the 3rd line of defense, okay, these guys, okay, especially your phagocytic cells, talk to cells that are in the 3rd line of defense. Okay, and we have, for the 3rd line of defense, as the part of the adaptive immune system, we have B cells and we have T cells. Okay. And these guys, plus the natural killer cells, are known as lymphocytes. Okay, or cells of the lymphatic system. Okay. So this is how the innate immune system starts talking to the adaptive immune system. Okay. And then there are T cells that chat back to the phagocytic cells. Okay. And the products of the B cells can stimulate the granulocytes to work better. Okay. They can also work with complement. Okay. And all of them are chatting together using cytokines. Okay. So there's a lot of talk back and forth, okay, between the cells of the second line of defense that are a part of the innate immune system and the cells of the adaptive immune system. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. If I'm moving on too fast before you get to your mute button, let me know. I'm happy to back up and answer any of your questions. Okay, so now that I've let me go back. Okay, I almost forgot to go over characteristics. Okay, I've given you the pieces, but let's talk about overall characteristics. Okay, the innate immune system is immediate. As soon as you have an exposure, okay, to a pathogen and or damage to your skin or some other barrier, okay, your innate immune system is going to kick in. Okay, it doesn't have to wait around. Okay, so as soon as you're born, okay, and we cut your umbilical cord and you get your first exposure to skin bacteria, which are potential pathogens. They're okay on your skin, not so much in your blood and your tissues, okay? From your umbilical cord, okay? And so your innate immune system kicks in immediately, okay, and starts fighting those skin bacteria that have gotten where they shouldn't get, okay? Because it's immediate, okay, it is, I was going to use the term non-specific, but that's not correct, okay? It is what we call inborn. Okay, so it's going to react to a certain set of specific cues. Okay, we're going to talk about that more next time, but we call them let's see, they changed it. They don't call them pathogen associated molecules anymore. They call them molecular associated. Let's see, and I'm used to the old one. Pathogen associated molecular patterns. Okay. They decided that it wasn't just pathogens, it was all microbes. Okay. So these are signals that your body recognizes immediately as foreign because they are molecules that we never make. Okay. We never make these molecules. So your innate immune system can pounce immediately as soon as you're exposed to those, okay? But your innate immune system is never going to recognize anything different, okay? It's not going to adapt to new pathogens, okay, to new patterns, okay? By the way, now is as good a time as any to introduce you to a term that is in Sarago, but like I said, repetition is good. And that is antigen. Okay, and I'm going to abbreviate that as AG. Okay, so an antigen is anything that will stimulate an immune response. Okay, so these MAMPs are a type of antigen. Okay, they're antigens that your innate immune system will respond to because it sees them as foreign. Okay. Now, the adaptive immune system, okay, is slower, okay, and it is learned, okay. In other words, it has memory. And so your adaptive immune system can learn to respond to just about any antigen that you are exposed to. Okay. This is part of the reason why vaccines work. Okay. Because when you are exposed to an antigen, okay, whether it's a MAMP or something that is not a MAMP, okay, your adaptive immune system can recognize it and mount an immune response. Okay. The first time through, it takes about 3 to 5 days, okay, for your adaptive immune system to get up and running. Okay. On the second exposure, okay, you can have an almost immediate response. Okay. And each time, okay, you develop more and more memory, so you have a better response each time you're exposed. Okay, so going back to the new little baby that's just barely born, okay, the innate immune system is going to respond to the MAMPs, okay, that are getting into where the umbilical cord has been cut, okay. But the adaptive immune system is also going to respond. In about 3 to 5 days, we're going to see a rise in antibodies, okay, to antigens associated with specific skin bacteria. Okay? And we're going to see T cells that are getting up and running and ready to fight also. Okay? And so later on, when I'm a toddler and I fall down and scrape my knee, my immune response, my adaptive immune response to those skin bacteria are much faster. Okay? Because I've already been exposed. Okay, questions about that part? Okay, let's talk about where all this is happening in the body. Okay. So we're going to draw my cartoon person, which really is not up to the task, but we're going to do as good a job as possible with my limited artistic skills. Okay. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the circulatory system. Okay, so I'm going to draw a very cartoony heart. Okay, we've got okay, our valves there, or the first part of our arteries and veins coming in. Okay, and I'm also going to draw some lungs. Okay, so we've got some lungs here. Okay, so in the circulatory system, as your blood leaves your heart, okay, it generally first thing it does is it comes into the heart and then it goes and circulates in your lungs and picks up oxygen. Okay, turns a nice bright red. Okay, then it goes into the heart and then it leaves the heart and goes to the rest of the body. Okay. And I'm going to draw it incorrectly as circulating through your entire body before it comes back, but that's easier to draw. Okay, and as it does so, it's going to dump its oxygen. It's going to turn blue again. It's going to pick up carbon dioxide. Okay, and it's going to come back to the heart. Okay, this is the circulatory system. Okay, so it's composed of arteries leaving the heart and veins coming back to the heart. Okay, and then we have capillaries. Okay, so these are teeny tiny vesicles that are between when you shift from arteries back to veins. Okay, and they allow oxygen to diffuse out of the blood. Okay, it's released by the red blood cells. Okay, and then CO2 diffuses in from the cells doing the intermediate step in the Krebs cycle. We're producing CO2 through metabolism, and then nutrients, okay, get carried to the tissues. Okay, but in that process we get a lot of leakage. Okay, and so let me back up and talk about the parts of blood. Okay, So in the circulatory system, we have blood. Okay. Whoops, I left a no out. So we have blood, okay, that is composed of cells. Okay. We have red blood cells. Okay. Whoops. And we've got platelets and all sorts of good stuff. Okay. We also have liquidy stuff. Okay. So we have plasma, which is the liquid portion of blood that has the clotting factors. Okay. Once we draw blood and if we allow it to clot and we remove that clot, we call that serum. Okay. Now, serum leaks out of the capillaries. Okay. And when it leaks out and it starts to bathe the tissues, we call it either interstitial fluid or lymph. And in this class, we're going to call it lymph. Okay. And it carries dissolved gases, nutrients, okay, everything that your tissues need to live. Okay. But we got to get this lymph back into the circulatory system once it leaves. Okay. It's kind of a one-way trip for the serum turned lymph. Okay. Once it leaves the capillaries. Okay. So how we get it back is there's a series of lymphatic vessels, okay, that go just one direction, okay, and they dump into the heart, okay, through a big old lymphatic vessel that dumps into the major vein that dumps into the heart, okay. So lymph always goes toward the heart, okay. I haven't shown blood circulating through your head, but you know it circulates everywhere. Okay. So lymph goes just one direction. And while it's coming back from the tissues, it is an excellent time to check for pathogens. Okay. So the lymph goes through a series of organs that we call lymph nodes. Okay. So besides the lymphatic vessels, okay, so we've got lymph, we've got lymphatic vessels, okay, and we also have lymph nodes. Okay, and lymph nodes are round organs, okay, that we have at various junctures. We have some in our neck, okay, we have some in our armpits, and we have some in our groin, okay? So those are pretty much stopping points. Well, stopping point is not the right term. Filtering spots, okay? For the lymph to filter through the lymph nodes and have the cells of your third line of defense check for pathogens, okay? And when you start getting activity in your lymph nodes, then you get swelling of your lymph nodes as cells increase. Okay, and that's usually a good sign of infection, is if you have swollen lymph nodes. Okay, all right, how are we doing so far? Okay, now we have some other tissues and organs that are also associated with the lymphatic system. Okay. As a part of both the innate and the adaptive immune system. Okay. Now, just for simplicity with the lymph nodes, I mentioned just the adaptive immune system. You've got your innate immune system in there too. Okay, we're going to talk more about that next time. All right, so we also have other tissues that are associated with the immune system. Okay, and first, I'm going to talk about primary lymphatic tissue. Okay. Okay. So in your neck. Actually, it's getting toward where your body starts. Okay. I have kind of a butterfly shaped organ called the thymus. Okay. It's in about the same area as your thyroid gland. Okay. But the thymus is where T cells go to mature. Okay. Think of it as kind of like college for T cells, for immune cells. Okay. And we call T cells because they mature in the thymus. Okay. So that is considered a primary lymphatic tissue. Okay. But they were first born in the bone marrow. Okay. That's where all blood cells, whether they're red blood cells or platelets or T cells or B cells, okay, they all start out in the bone marrow. When you're a kid, your bone marrow tends to be in your femur, okay? But as you get older, it moves up to your ribs, okay, for whatever reason, okay? But bone marrow is where, okay, all of your blood cells are born. Okay. But it's also where B cells mature, okay? They don't even go to the thymus, okay? They hang out in the bone marrow. And for this class, you can think of the B standing for bone. It doesn't really, but you don't need to worry about that in this class. It's named after an organ in birds that we don't have, okay? So that's the primary lymphatic tissue, the thymus and the bone marrow, okay? Now, in addition to that, and in addition to lymph nodes, okay, and all of this, we also have some of what is called mucosal associated lymphatic tissue, or MALT. Okay. Now you can separate MALT into different groups. Okay. But under this, okay, you have like in the intestines, we have the Peyer's patches. That's supposed to be a Y. And I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. My apologies. Okay. So you have that. Your tonsils are considered part of this. Okay. And I think I misspelled that too. And then also your appendix. Okay, so it used to be that we thought that your appendix was a useless organ left over from when we were eating more and tougher vegetative material. Okay. But kind of turned to find out your appendix is important for your immune system. Okay. So all of this is considered secondary lymphatic tissue, okay, or secondary organs. Over here, this is your primary lymphatic. Okay. But all of these, all of that is part of how your body screens for pathogens. Okay. All right. Questions? How are we doing so far? And this is a very, very brief overview. When you get to AMP, you will get more detailed, less generalized information, but this is a good place to start. All right, well, tell you what, let's move back to the PowerPoint, and I'm going to ask some questions. And let me get a poll set up here. Okay, so the adaptive and the innate immune systems are considered separate. Okay, but why are they considered separate when they interact with each other? Okay, we've got some good voting started. Okay, very good. We're past 50%. Let's see if we can get 100%. Okay, almost there, almost there. Okay, I think we've stalled. Oh, we got 100%. Good job. Okay, we've got a tie for the favorite answer. Okay, the innate immune system is the first line of defense against infection, and the innate immune system can act independently of the adaptive immune system. Okay, so actually, A is a true statement, but it doesn't answer the question as to why they're considered separate. Okay, because being the first line of defense, maybe, it would be integrated in with the second and third line of defense. It's definitely integrated in with these, the first and second lines of defense are definitely together in the innate immune system. Okay, so D is actually the correct answer. Okay, so the innate immune system can act independently of the adaptive immune system. Okay, and also I don't have this as an answer option, but we find it being independent in different animals other than humans. Okay, and then if you picked these two, the innate immune system responds first when there's damage to the tissue, and the innate immune system helps stimulate the adaptive immune system. Those are all true statements, but they don't help explain the why they're considered separate. Okay, D is the only one that can. Okay, so if you picked A through C, don't feel bad. This is practice. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next question. Let me relaunch the poll. Okay, during a physical examination, when a clinician feels your neck, what organ is he or she checking? Okay, we've got some good early voting. Okay, we're past 50%. Hey, we're almost to 100%. We can do it, we can do it. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And whoops. Yeah, let's see. There we go. That's what I want to do. So everybody picked the lymph nodes. That is correct. Okay, my next question is why? Why is that the correct answer?
Because if the lymph nodes are swollen, then it's a sign of infection.
Very good. Yes, it's a sign of infection. And it's a whole lot easier to get to your neck than, say, your armpits or your groin. Yeah. And if one set are swollen, usually all the others are swollen too. Hey, very good. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about barriers. Now, I'm going to, like I said, do two examples that will cover all four parts of barrier defenses. Okay. And so when you see them two different ways, hopefully that will help you get a feel, okay, a feel for what's going on. Whoops. Did not intend to do that. Okay, so your skin is composed of several layers. Okay, so we're going to start with skin. okay, as our first organ, in which we're going to be talking about the different barriers. Okay. All right. So on the outside of your skin, okay, you have what is called the epidermis. Okay. I think it's a mess. Okay, so the epidermis is composed of flattened dead cells, okay, or dead or dying once they get there, okay. And they are full of a protein called keratin. Okay, so we call these keratinized cells. Okay, and these cells, which are several cell layers thick, act as a barrier to the outside world. Okay. Now, further down, we have the dermis. Okay. And we have living tissues there, or living cells. So we've got progenitor cells that are attached to the basement membrane. Okay. And as they divide and move up, okay, they become more and more flattened and keratinized until they get up to the top. Okay, now you've got all sorts of other shapes and sizes, but that's as much detail as we're going to go into in this class. Okay, and then you also have, veins and capillaries going through here, okay, providing nutrients. Okay, we've also got a bunch of connective tissue. Okay, so this part through here, okay, is alive. Pretty much up here, there are exceptions. Okay, it's pretty much dead. Okay. Now, starting in the dermis and coming up and out, okay, we have hair follicles, okay, that come up to the surface, and you have hairs, okay, and other cells coming up and out. Okay. So we have hair follicles. Okay, so they, the hairs on your arm allow you, they increase your touch sensitivity. Okay. Hair on your head, it's speculated that that's to prevent losing a lot of body heat, since we tend to lose most of our body heat through our very expensive head carrying a very expensive brain. Okay. A lot of activity going on in the brain. Okay. So, and associated, and I'm not going to try to draw it accurately, okay, associated with the hair follicles, okay, we have sebaceous glands. Okay. Okay, so these are basically oil glands. Okay. And then over here we have sweat glands. Yeah. All right. So now that we got the anatomy here, let's talk about how each of these are a barrier. Okay. So these keratinized cells, because they're dead and they form a layer, several cell layers thick, they are a physical barrier. Okay. They are like a wall between our living tissues and the outside world. Okay. And they're a very good barrier. They're several cell layers thick. They're packed in there really tight, and keratin tends to be a little bit waterproof. Okay. So that is a physical barrier. Okay. Now, even as we speak, these dead cells flake off. Okay. And we're shedding skin all the time. We're continually renewing this dead layer from the bottom side up. Okay, so in the process of shedding off, they take bacteria with them. So I'm going to put a little cluster of staph here. Okay, they shed and they go off. So any bacteria or other microbes that colonize human skin, okay, have to be able to attach to keratinized skin cells, okay, and they also have to keep dividing so that when these guys flake off, there's still more here to carry on, okay? So they have to be able to attach, okay, and multiply in the environment of the skin, okay? But that's a physical barrier, whereas the shedding of the skin is a mechanical barrier, okay? Think mechanical, think machine, moving. So anything that is a mechanical barrier is movement, okay? So these dead cells coming off is considered a mechanical barrier, okay? All right, so let's move on to chemical, okay? Chemical barriers. Let's start with oil. Okay, so the sebaceous glands produce oil, okay, and it flows out over the surface of the skin, okay, adding a waterproof barrier, okay. That helps keep you from losing water too fast, and also when you take a bath, it prevents you from swelling up like a grape and popping, you know, right off the bat, okay. So it acts in that way, but it's considered a chemical barrier, okay, because oil is a chemical, okay. And in this oil, okay, besides being dry, okay, part of it is it helps keep your skin dry, and most microbes don't like dry. If you think back to the first part of chapter 7, most microbes need some water, okay. So the microbes that live routinely on your skin that make a home there. Oh, and it also depends upon what area of the skin, okay. Palms of your hand, very dry, skin under your armpits, not so much, okay. So there are different areas, different level of moisture. But this oil, okay, besides excluding water, okay, because it is hydrophobic, okay, so water is not going to mix real well with it, okay, but also it contains some toxins, okay, that help keep the numbers of microbes down, okay. Cells that are a part of your normal skin microbiota that live there very happily are not bothered by these toxins, okay. But others that are not adapted to living on your skin, okay, can be killed by these, okay. So that is a part of the chemical defense, okay. Now let's talk about sweat. Let's do sweat blue because, you know, it's mainly water. Okay, so your sweat glands make sweat when you exercise and you get hot, okay? Comes out on the surface of your skin, and as it evaporates off, it helps with cooling, okay? Now, what else is in sweat? It's not just water.
Salt.
Salt.
Salt, exactly. We've got a lot of salt in our sweat. And when the salt dries, we have a lot of salt on the surface of our skin, okay? So this is also considered a chemical barrier, okay? Because if you remember back to chapter 7, there's not a whole lot of microbes that like to live in a high salt environment, okay? What do we call them, by the way?
Halophiles.
Very good, halophiles. Good job. So the cells of your normal microbiota, okay, tend to be facultative halophiles. They can grow in the presence of salt, but they can also grow in lower levels of salt, okay? Which makes sense because periodically through the day, you're going to be flooded with salt and you're going to get more water, a lower reduction, okay, of salt concentration from fresh sweat. Then as it dries, okay, the concentration of salt goes up higher and higher and higher, okay? Okay, so physical barrier, keratinized cells on the surface, okay? Mechanical barrier, okay? Flaking off of the skin cells, okay? And then chemical barriers would be the oil, the toxins in the oil, and the salt in the sweat, okay? So let's go back to our little friends living here on the surface of your skin. We'll go ahead and put a few bacilli just for the fun of it, but most of them, at least what we're able to culture, are cocci, okay? You are covered in bacteria. I know that's kind of an icky thought, but they're your friends. You want them there, okay? Because when a transient pathogen comes along, okay, there's really no place to sit down, okay, because our normal microbiota are in the way, okay? Also, you know, the chemical and physical and mechanical barriers are also going to prevent them from attaching and colonizing, okay? But the microbes that are a part of your normal microbiota also produce toxins, okay? So these toxins help keep the numbers of the competitors down, okay? They keep down the numbers of transient microbes, okay? And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. And then also the microbes that are of your normal microbiota that are taking up all the spaces also take up available nutrients, okay? So your normal skin microbiota are part of what we call your microbial barriers, okay? Okay, questions about skin. Okay, if you have questions, let me know. We can go back. Whoops. I paused share unintentionally. Okay, let's move on to the intestines.
Counterpoint, you should wait like 30 more seconds so I can finish writing stuff
Oh,
down.
sure, let me undo that. Come on. Come on. There we go. How's that?
Perfect, thank you.
Quite welcome.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what the flaking cells, what kind of barrier did you say that was again?
That would be considered mechanical because they're moving up and off.
Okay, thank you.
Quite welcome. Yeah, anytime you have movement, it's considered a mechanical barrier.
So is that the only mechanical barrier then? Would be the dead cells moving off, or since the fluids are moving, are they considered mechanicals?
They could be if they were moving at a fast enough pace to actually knock bacteria off, but your oils and your sweat don't move that fast.
But since it's, so the skin moves faster then, is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
the flaking actually moves up and off, and it carries bacteria with them.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so once again, that's the only mechanical part then of the skin.
From skin without adding in, you know, like when you're washing your hands, you know, you rub and, you know, that kind of adds to the mechanical, but it's more that you're aiding this process. And you're also adding soaps and stuff that break up oils and what have you to help carry stuff away.
And that would be more chemical, wouldn't it? The soaps?
The soaps would be chemical, but we usually don't include soap soap in your immune system because we make that externally to our body.
Okay,
So washing your hands is kind of external. It's a behavioral thing. It's not an anatomical thing. Does that make sense?
mm-hmm.
So far as I know, this is the only mechanical barrier.
And mechanical is not the same as physical.
Right. Physical, think stationary. It's really not. But at this point, it's easier to remember it that way, that, your skin is a barrier. It's not doing a whole lot. It's just
Okay.
sitting there.
So the keratinized cells would be physical. Okay.
Yes, they are physical. Yeah. And we generally consider them to be structures rather than like the oil is not really a structure. The sweat is not really a structure. So that's why these are chemical.
That's why what ones are chemical? I'm sorry.
The oil and the sweat.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? Okay, have you had a chance to copy it down?
Yeah, I'm good now. Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. All right, let us move on to the intestines.
Are we still under physical barriers?
This one I'm going to do physical, mechanical, chemical, and microbial,
Okay,
like I did all at once with the skin. Okay, we're just moving to a different body part.
perfect.
Yeah. So the lining of your intestines, okay, are a part of your mucous membrane. Okay, or we also call it the mucosa. Okay, so on the outside of you is the epidermis. Okay, starting with your lips, okay, you have your mucous membrane. So it's the lining of the inside of you that has contact with the outside environment. Okay, humans are kind of like a donut. Okay, we've got an outside, and then we've got an inside, outside. So what do I mean by inside, outside? So it's on the inside of your body, but it still has contact with the outside environment. Okay, so it's still considered an outside surface. Okay, I can swallow, and by the way, don't do this. I can swallow a quarter and have it go all the way through without contacting my internal tissues. Okay, unless it gets stuck in my appendix and then they have to go do surgery. So, but as children, we tend to swallow things we shouldn't. Okay, so the mucosa lines our internal surfaces that have contact with the outside environment. Okay, so that would be my mouth, my respiratory system, my digestive tract, my urinary tract, and genitals. Okay, because they all have contact with the outside environment. Okay, all right, so we're going to use the intestines as an example of a mucous membrane. Okay, so we're going to do the small intestine just because I enjoy drawing brush cells. Okay, and so you have, let's go ahead and do that. We'll get it back. And we have these little projections that stick out, okay? And these cells are nice and tight together, okay? We've got spot welds, okay? All the way around, okay? Because these cells, remember your intestines are a tube, I'm drawing just kind of a 2D deal here. But we have a spot weld, okay, that welds these cells together and forms a barrier. Okay.
A spot weld?
Well, they're actually called tight junctions, but it's kind of like a spot weld. The technical term, let me go ahead and put tight junctions. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, quite welcome. Okay, so we have tight junctions all the way connecting these cells to each other and preventing whatever's out here from getting down here. Okay. So I have these all along, okay, and that would be considered a physical barrier. Okay. Now I'm going to toss in some an M cell, okay, and a Peyer's patch. Okay, so it's a little different. It's not this fancy dancy spot weld here or fancy dancy brush cell here. But in all tissues, we have these tight junctions, okay, that hold the cells together. Okay, because we don't want anything from the outside getting in unless it should. Okay. All right, so we have tight junctions that are a part of the physical, okay, physical barrier that keeps the outside out and not letting it get in. Okay. Now the mucous membrane is only about 3 cell layers thick. Okay. We've got some cells that when these guys shed, okay, they're going to become brush cells. And we've got more cells down here, and then you got your basement membrane. So it's a whole lot thinner, okay, than your epidermis, okay? And consequently, they shed faster, okay? Whereas with your skin, you can completely renew your skin in about a week, okay? With your intestinal lining and other parts of your mucous membrane, you renew that in about 3 days. Interesting thought. So that is why, so we're going to have a brush cell that is dyed, so I'm going to draw it more crinkly. Okay. So that is why you can order a kit to check for colon cancer, and you send in a sample of feces. Okay, and so what they do is they extract the DNA from that, and they go looking for atypical DNA. Okay. And it's because you've got cells continually shedding into your feces, okay, into the contents of your intestines, okay? So that would be considered a physical, or excuse me, a mechanical barrier, okay, the shedding of your mucosa, okay? Also, your digestive tract has food, okay, we'll say you've had a salad, we'll do a green. Okay, food, generally speaking, moves one way because of peristalsis. Okay, the movement of your digestive tract, moving food. Okay, and then when it becomes feces, and feces moving it one way. Okay, so this one-way direction is considered a physical barrier. Okay, we've got constant movement. Okay, now when we're talking, oh, sure, let's get to the mucus, which is the mucus of mucosa. Okay. The cells of your mucous membrane produce mucus, okay, which is sticky. Okay. So it's considered a physical barrier because anything that comes through that's let's say it's a pathogen, okay. Actually, let's make that gram positive. And they get stuck in there unless they've adapted to being able to live in mucus and to burrow through and grab a hold of your cells. And really, there's not very many that live in your small intestine. So we'll just put a few. Okay. And they've got fimbriae that will attach, okay, to your intestinal cells. Whereas we'll say this guy has fimbriae, but they're not the right kind to grab a hold of your cells, and it's not adapted to burrowing through. And so it gets caught in the mucus and it gets moved one way. Okay, getting moved toward the exit. Okay. So the movement, the mucus itself is considered a physical barrier. Your body moving the mucus is considered a mechanical barrier. Okay. Okay, so peristalsis moves mucus, okay, but also, and most of your mucosa you have cilia sticking out of the cells. Yeah. And they kind of beat and move the mucus. Okay. All right. So it would be the cilia would be the mechanical barrier as opposed to the mucus itself. Yes, Courtney.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. You said the food is a physical barrier?
The movement of the food, the movement of your digestive tract moving the food.
Okay, okay. And just the mucus itself is a physical barrier, but if it's moving, it's a mechanical barrier?
Well, the cilia moving the mucus.
It
is
just moves it
considered-
anyway, so it would be, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the cilia moving it, and also any mucus that gets knocked off by the food through the action of peristalsis. Yes, Mitchell.
So is mucus a physical barrier?
It's a physical barrier. It's also a chemical barrier.
Okay.
Yeah, we
All right.
haven't gotten to the chemical part yet. But it is considered a physical barrier because it's sticky and stuff gets trapped in it. So like in my respiratory tract, I'm breathing in microscopic particles, pollen, bits and pieces of ash from, from combustion engines, from cars, okay? Gets caught in the mucus. The ciliated cells of my respiratory tract move the mucus up and out.
Okay.
Yeah. So cilia, they would be mechanical, and the mucus would be considered physical. Okay. Now, I said that mucus is also considered chemical. It's because of the stuff that's in it. Okay. So next week, when we talk about antibodies, you're going to learn about how, antibodies are abbreviated AB. Okay. You've got antibodies in your mucus. Okay, specifically IgA. You don't need to know that for this chapter, but the more you hear it, the more you're likely you are to remember it. Okay. So that acts as a chemical barrier. Okay. Also, your cells produce some toxins. Those toxins actually, we're going to say your intestinal cells do not produce toxins because there's not as many. So we're going to say no. We're going to get to toxins when we talk about your normal microbiota. Okay. But the antibodies in mucus would be considered, okay, a chemical barrier. Okay. So it's not really the mucus, it's the stuff in the mucus. Does that make sense? Okay. Also, there are other chemicals that your body makes. We'll get into that later when I ask you questions. Okay. But one that I'm going to mention is mucus often contains lysozyme. Okay. And it is an enzyme that is specifically set up to break down peptidoglycan. Okay. So it helps keep the numbers of especially your gram-positive bacteria down. It's not really a toxin, it's an enzyme. Okay, but it is considered a chemical barrier because it's a protein, and proteins are chemicals. Okay, how are we doing?
I think we're doing good.
Okay, good. All right, let's get to your normal microbiota. Now, like I said, you really have a whole lot of and diversity of bacteria living in your large intestines. Not as many in your small intestines just because things are moving by too fast. Okay, they keep getting knocked off. Okay, so, but we're going to go ahead and put them in here. So you have your cute little bacteria that have adapted to living in your intestines. Okay, and so when a pathogen comes along, if all of the seats at the table are taken, it's kind of like with your skin. Okay, then it doesn't have a place for it to grab a hold. Okay, so maybe this is a pathogen and it's set up to be able to grab a hold of your intestinal cells. if I have one of my friendly bacteria here, its fimbriae are not going to be able to attach to these bacteria. They're set up to attach to human intestinal cells, not to other bacteria. Okay. Also, these guys take up all the food and nutrients. Okay. And they also produce toxins. Okay, like on the skin, they produce toxins. Okay, that keep down the numbers of their competitors. Okay, and so they'll keep the numbers down of the normal microbiota, but they also can take out quite a few potential pathogens. Okay. All right, so that would be considered microbial barriers. Okay. All right, how are we doing?
So it's microbial because it produces because the bacteria are producing toxins.
Yeah, as opposed to our cells producing the toxins. If our
And
cells produce the toxins, it'd be considered chemical. But since it's being made by our microbial friends,
Okay.
it's considered part of the microbial defense.
And then the cilia
Yes,
are on those.
they're on the human intestinal cells.
Okay.
Yeah, because prokaryotes don't have cilia, they have fimbriae.
With the fimbriae.
Yeah, now if I had a nasty
Yeah.
amoeba, okay, nasty amoeba can, well, actually, if it were a ciliated protozoa, amoeba don't have cilia either, then they could have cilia. But yeah, only eukaryotic cells have cilia.
Okay.
Hey, how are we doing?
So microbial barriers are your own bacteria producing toxins
Right, and taking up space.
and taking up space.
And also in your gut, they also educate your immune system. So you do better when you have a nice, diverse microbiota because it stimulates your immune system appropriately. They do all sorts of good stuff for us. Gotta love your gut bacteria. Treat them well, feed them fiber. In general. Okay, other questions? Are you ready for me to ask you questions? Okay, so I'm going to fast forward through these, the slides that I gave you for the purposes of being able to take notes if you so desire. I'm going to relaunch this poll. Okay, so here would be an indication of where we didn't talk about this, but you take what you know and apply it. Okay, so stomach acid would be considered chemical, mechanical, microbial, or physical. We've got some good early voting. Ooh, we just hit 50%. Okay, we're almost to 70%. We just passed 70%. Very good. Okay, we're coming up on 100%. We're almost there. Okay, just for the sake of time, I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share results. Okay, everybody picked chemical, which is correct. Tell me why it's chemical.
I mean, it's an acid, stomach acid.
Very good. Now, as a tie-in to chapter 7, okay, an organism that would be able to survive and grow happily in the stomach would be called a what?
Acidophile.
Acidophile. Good job. Okay, so here's my next one. We're going to skip this next one because I don't like it. How about the flow of urine? Would that be considered chemical, mechanical, microbial, or physical? Hey, we're past 50%. Good job. Hey, we're at 75. See if we can get to 100%. And we're at 87. Just for the sake of time, because I want to have one more question for you before we go into what to do for next time. Okay, so most of you picked B, mechanical, and you are correct. Why is it mechanical?
Because you were asking about the flow of urine, so that's a mechanism.
Okay, very good. It is a mechanism. It is movement. And is the flow of urine one direction, or at least it should be?
Under
Yes.
normal circumstances, yes.
Yes, yes, it is. It's supposed to go from your kidney to your bladder and out. None of this going back up the wrong way. Okay, and so that helps prevent your skin bacteria from going up your urethra and getting into your bladder. Okay. All right, so you could consider it, if I'd asked about the pH of urine, that would have been chemical. Okay, and physical, it is, you know, if it were stationary. Okay, so like the lining of the bladder, that would be considered physical because it's not moving. Because it's moving, the flow of urine is moving, then we consider it mechanical. Let me see how much time we got. Oh, we've got time for one more. Okay, what about eating yogurt when you are on an antibiotic? That would be, let me relaunch the poll. That would be supporting a chemical, mechanical, microbial, or physical barrier. Okay, we've got some good early voting. We're already at 50%. Good job. 75%. Good job. 87%. Okay, just for the sake of time, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And you all picked microbial. Good job. Yes, all of those lovely probiotics that are in the yogurt are considered aiding your microbial barrier defenses. Okay. All right. Good job, everybody. All right. Let's move from here to things to think about for next time. Okay, the embedded tutoring assignment number 3 is not due this week, but it's due the week after that. But, you know, go ahead and do it this week. Okay. Read chapter 11, and then if you haven't done so already, and then this chapter really makes more sense if you review chapter 2, which is the infamous chemistry question or chapters. Especially next time when we start talking about cytokines and all of those fun things. Okay. Chapters 3 and 4. Okay, 3 prokaryotic structure versus 4 eukaryotic structure. When we start talking about structures that your innate immune system recognizes, okay, it all goes back to the differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes, and the differences between animal cells and fungal cells, animal cells and protozoa cells. Okay. And then reviewing chapter 7, okay, when we're talking about growth conditions, okay, what do certain microbes need to survive, okay, and how we can control your growth. Believe it or not, your cells actually produce some of the active ingredients that we find in some disinfectants, okay. Now, we don't use your immune cells to produce them because they don't produce enough for it to be chemically feasible, okay? But you're going to recognize some of them, okay? All right, so any questions before we end?
When was the case study, the one we're on due?
Oh, so the signature assignment, It's not due for, I want to say that it's due on the 28th. Don't quote me. It's not until week 14 in any way, in any case. So it's not due for a couple of weeks. Yep, so you've got time. And then I don't have it on this slide, but I will next time. Exam 4 opens this Friday. I know that's way too soon. Yeah, that's why I moved the due date for the signature assignment.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. And you'll have a week and a day to take exam 4.
Hey, Teresa,
Yeah.